Welcome to John Gets Games. Today I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Tiny Epic Western. This game will be live on Kickstarter on January 11th, 2016, and it has an interesting take on worker placement. You put your workers down much like other games and you get some stuff. However, at the end of each round, every player in a location is going to have a poker hand where they see who has the best 3-card hand in a simplified Texas Hold'em style, and the person who wins that gets a bunch of extra stuff. I think that's enough talking about the game. Let's jump right into it. Here's a starting setup for a 3-player game of Tiny Epic Western. The first thing you'll notice is that this is the print-and-play version of the game, and I've used several bits and pieces from other board games to make it playable. It is fully playable. The only thing is you don't get to see all the beautiful art that goes along with the actual game. Each player has a large card in front of them which tells them who they are, what their asymmetric power is, as well as how many resources they have, and holds all of their posse members. At the beginning of each turn, we deal 2 cards to each player. However, we've now run into the first asymmetric player power, that of the gambler for the red player here. It says, if you do not have your 3rd posse member, draw a 3rd poker card. Well, we see that these 2 posse members are standing up because those are in use. This lying down guy is not in use for the turn. That means they don't have their 3rd member, so they get to look at a 3rd card. At this point, each player chooses one of their 2 or 3 cards if they happen to be the gambler, and they discard the other card. Now, what we're looking at with these cards is to create the best 3-card hands we can with the locations as they're set up in front of us. You may notice these poker cards that have been dealt out between all the locations on the board. These come out at the end of every round. Players are only going to have a single card after they discard, and the way you make these hands is you apply that card to the 2 cards flanking a location if you are vying to get some stuff out of that location. So that means down here, this 3-card hand would just be a pair of 4s, but over here, we've got a 3, 4, 5 for a nice strong straight if we are vying to control this area. And I'll show you exactly how all this goes down at the end of this round. From this point on, I'm going to play the game through the perspective of the yellow banker player here, who also happens to be the start player. So they look at these 2 cards and they decide that was some pretty strong stuff with this 4 with a potential straight or a couple pairs, so they're going to go ahead and keep this card and discard this 3 of Longhorns. Once the other players have discarded down to 1 card, we can begin the placement phase. Every one of these circular spots on all the locations around the board are spots where players can put down their posse members. Since I'm playing the yellow player and they have the start player token, that means that we get to place our posse member down first. Let's take a look at the banker's special ability. It says you gain 1 influence of your choice at the end of the round for every 2 buildings that you've built up to a maximum of 3 influence. Now, influence are these 3 tokens over here. We have law, force, and coins, and they're tracked going around the player board here up to 6. At the beginning of the game, all players have 0 buildings because you build buildings at the end of each round, and this is the first round. So as the banker, we want to get these buildings purchased so that we can activate our special ability. This is a purchasable building here, and each one of these is associated with an overall location around the board. In order to gain access to buying this building, we have to make sure we have a posse member in this location, specifically the bank here, in order to buy the auction house. Looking at the auction house, we see it costs 2 law, 1 force, and 1 coin, and right now we have 1 of each of those, so we just need 1 more force. Fortunately, looking at the bank, we can actually get force here. We have a circular area, which means we can put our posse member down, but this slash means we put the posse member on one side or the other. One side is safe. When I go here, I immediately get 1 law and I add it to my area. However, if I was to put my posse member down here, I would be betting that I have the best poker hand for the bank, and if that's true, then I would get 2 law. Now we know that we have this 4 of horseshoes, and we can see here the bank is flanked by a 5 and a 1, so we do not have a strong poker hand at all. We essentially have a 5-card high, which everybody has access to, so we're definitely not going to bet. We're just going to go for the simple 1 law. We'll increment it up on our player board here to show that we have it. The green player is the cowgirl, and their special ability is you add 1 to the dual die for every 2 force that you have. Now at the beginning of the game, they only have a single force, so it's pretty good for the cowgirl player to get more force to activate this ability. We'll explain the dual die later when we do our first shootout, but it's pretty obvious that adding numbers to these dice is going to be a good thing. The cowgirl decides to also go for an immediate benefit and getting 1 force, probably because that gets them a force, so if they do any shootouts this turn, they get this +1 benefit, whereas if they were betting, they would only get that at the end of the turn. In the 3-player game, there are 2 different locations that have a building that's already associated with them that's activatable. This circle right here with the building symbol means that if our red player was to just go right here, they activate the building underneath. And if we look down here, it says, for every Longhorn card in play, gain 1 resource up to a max of 3, but this happens during the resolution at the end of the round. As we can see, there's already 2 Longhorn cards in play, so that's a pretty safe bet, and if anybody reveals a Longhorn card when they do their poker hands, then that's only going to make this better. Alright, it's back to us as the yellow player, and remember we've got this 4 of horseshoes, which is a really good hand over here because that's a 3-4-5, which is a straight, one of the best hands in the game. Unfortunately, in order to get into the hideout to make use of that, we have to do a duel with the red player because there's only one circular spot here. So in order to do that, we're going to take our posse member, just slide him on in here, and that immediately starts a shootout. Duels are pretty simple. Each player is going to roll a die, and whoever rolls the highest number wins. Now I've got a yellow die and a red die, as well as a green die if they ever get into the fight, just to make it really obvious who rolls which dice, so let's go ahead and do it. Alright, this is great for us. This means we are winning the duel for now, but the red player has a couple things they can do to get around this. The first thing they could do is reveal this poker card and add that value to the die they rolled, which would probably put them back over 6. The other thing is, while dueling, a defender can re-roll by spending law. Now we see that the red player does have 1 law to spend if they want to do that to re-roll. However, I rolled a 6, and the best they can do is tie, and the defender does win ties, but that's pretty unlikely they'd win that. So the red player decides why not. They show their poker card, and it is a 3. They now have an 8 to my 6, however, I can now counter in the exact same way. As the attacker, I could spend a force to re-roll, however, 6 is as good as it gets. Or I could just reveal this 4 that I already have, and I may as well do that. So I reveal it, making this a 10. At this point, the red player could choose to re-roll, but they know that they are doomed. They're not going to win the shootout, and they lose. At the end of the duel, you take the posse member who lost, and you put them face down, and the posse member who won stands up right on top of them. This means the red player will no longer get access to this ability. However, just having a posse member in this zone will allow them to vie to win this poker hand here. Unfortunately, since we already revealed these cards in the duel, they know their pair of 3s is not going to beat this straight. And the final aspect to a duel is the player who won gets the wanted card. You see that if you are wanted at the end of a round, you get 1 resource of your choice. So it's really good to be wanted. However, once there is another duel, the person who wins that duel is going to take this wanted card away. So it incentivizes people to attack other people to grab this from me. It's now the green player's turn, and they go ahead and bet at the saloon that they're going to have the best hand here between this 3 and the 4. And lastly, the red player is going to place over here at the sheriff's office. We see these 2 zones, which means you put your posse on one side or another. He's going to go ahead and put it right here, which says +1, and that makes this revealed 3 effectively a 4 from now on. But you'll also notice this little question mark on this area. That means the red player is immediately going to get 1 influence of their choice. And he's going to take a law. Alright, the placement is complete, so now we shift into resolution. With resolution, we always start with a hideout, and we work clockwise all the way around to the town hall. So the red player came in with a pair of 3s at the hideout, but the yellow player, which is us, has this straight. If you look over here at the town hall, you'll see that a pair is beaten by a flush and a straight and a 3 of a kind and a straight flush in that order. This means that we as the yellow player get 2 force. And we go ahead and log that here. The last thing for the hideout is that we as the yellow player are activating this cattle farm card. As you can see, it says for every Longhorn card in play, you get 1 influence of your choice. There are 2 out right now. We don't know what the Cowgirls card is yet because we are resolving in this order. So that means we get 2 more influence. Let's go ahead and balance things out by taking 1 gold and 1 law. Next up we have the saloon, and you'll notice that the green player is alone in this area. Don't worry, you're always going to have to fight someone with your poker hand. The green player has this 2, which means they have a 2-3-4, which is a very strong hand. However, you may have noticed this single poker card that's been face down for the whole game. This represents the rival who only comes into play when there's an uncontested zone. It's a random card, and we see that, oh, they got a pair of 4s. Fortunately for green, this straight beats a pair. So that means the cowgirl wins the saloon. They get 2 influence of their choice. For now, they're going to go ahead and take 2 force. Down at the sheriff's office, red is uncontested. They've got a 3, which makes themselves a nice straight. They go against the rival who has this 4 here. That's just a pair of 4s, so the red card wins. Now the red player has a choice. At the sheriff's office, they can take a force and a law, or they can stand up one of their posse members. However, the gambler only gets that extra card at the beginning of each round if they don't have a posse member already, so I think for the moment they're just going to take the extra stuff. So they get 1 law and 1 force. Down at the bank, we're vying to get these 2 coins. We've got this 4. Unfortunately, that just makes pretty much just a 5 of TPs high. The rival has this 4 here, so that means we are both going for this 5 card. That means now we go down to these 2 cards, and unfortunately, the TP suit definitely beats the horseshoe suit, as we can see over here on this handy-dandy little chart. So we don't get these coins. Now at the courthouse, the cowgirl has this 2. That makes a pair of 2, which definitely beats just a 4 high for the rival, so that means they're going to grab these 2 law influence. And that's going to put them up to 3. Finally, all players try to make the best poker hand at the town hall. The green player has a pair of 2s. The yellow player unfortunately just has a 5 high. And the same goes for the red player. And this is going to dictate who gets to buy buildings first. So the green player gets to purchase first because they have that pair of 2s, which is the strongest. And then both the yellow and red have a 5 high. So if you go down, now the yellow has a 4 high compared to the 3 high. So yellow player, us, we get to build second, and then red gets to build third. The green player is in the courthouse and the saloon, which means they only have access to these 2 cards here. Now, they have 4 force, 2 law, and only 1 coin, which means they cannot afford the central bank. However, they can't afford this school, and I think they're going to go ahead and purchase it. So they have to spend that 3 law and 1 gold. That means they are tapped out on both of those resources. Now they take this building and they put it right here in front of the courthouse. This is now a place that people can go to, and if they go there, they're going to activate this schoolhouse ability at the bottom. But the green player is always going to get these 3 victory points, as well as they have a little bit of say in this blue wheel and this mining pick. I think this is like the wagon industry and the mining industry. I'll explain what those mean in just a minute. Okay, so now it's our turn as yellow to buy one of these buildings because we are in the hideout and the bank. If we look at these 2 cards, we've got a couple things on them. So this one, first of all, we can afford both of them. This one is definitely cheaper, and we want to build lots of buildings, so building cheap buildings maybe is a good idea. This is only 1 victory point versus the 2 victory points of this auction house. However, the auction house has 2 of these railroad icons, and this has 1 of each. Now, what we're trying to go for here is just majority on these icons. There's only these 3 in the game. And you're going to get victory points if you have the most in your purchase buildings area at the end of the game. So this is a bit of an all-around card. This one would really go hard on these railroads. The other thing is we're going to activate or unlock these 2 options in our area down below the bank. Now, we won't necessarily be the first person to get access to it, but this auction house will let you pay 1 influence to immediately draw 2 building cards and try to build one. So that's another way to get more buildings out in process. But I think ultimately we want lots of cheap buildings to get lots of buildings fast, so let's go ahead and buy the jail. So this costs us 1 law and 2 force, so we go down there, and then we get to put this right there, so that's now an unlocked location that we can go to next turn. And finally, our red player can build, and you'll notice they are in the sheriff's office as well as the hideout, but the hideout's been purchased, so this barbershop here is the only thing that they actually have access to buy. However, it's pretty good points, and it's relatively cheap, so I think they're going to go ahead and grab it. So this costs them 1 of each of their resources. They go ahead and put this down into their area. And now for the final part of the town hall area. You may have noticed these 3 little icons up here, and those are associated with the 3 different icons I was talking about with the buildings. We have this little ingot, which is for the mining. We have this little wood stick for the railroads, and this blue guy right here for the wagon wheels. The player who had the best poker hand in the town hall gets to push one of these forward on this track, and you'll see we have a 2/1 points, 3/2, and 5/3. At the end of the game, each of these 3 different markers are going to be in one of these spots, and this shows you how many victory points you get for having the most or second most of that icon in your built buildings. The first building that the green player bought has the wagon wheel and the mine, so they're probably going to want to push one of those 2. They're not really sure which one matters, so at the moment they're just going to go ahead and take the mine and push it up once. This track also serves as a nice game clock. You're never allowed to have more than 1 of these icons in the far rightmost spot. That means you can have 2 of them at a certain point as we're moving up the tracks, but once they sift in here, they're going to get locked. And that means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible movements and 6 overall rounds in the game. So now it's the end of the round. We're going to pass the start player token once clockwise around, so the green player will go first on the next turn. And now we need to reset all these poker cards and all of these buildings. We're going to draw new ones out in both these cases. However, in these spots where there was a building that was activatable on the bottom, but a building was purchased up top, that building is going to pop up here. We're going to put a new one in here, so there's a bit of variety in these actions we can grab. So now we all draw 2 cards, except for the gambler who gets 3 because, once again, they only have 2 members in their posse. It also just occurred to me that we have this wanted card, which gives us 1 influence of our choice at the end of a round, so we're going to go ahead and grab a force. We drew 2 2s. Now this doesn't give us that many options. However, looking at the board, we see that a 2 right here would give us a nice little straight. We'd also get a straight down here. So if we're looking at these 2 cards, we're definitely going to take the one of the stronger suit. So go ahead and keep this hat and discard this card. Alright, so now we can begin placement with the green player. Our green player is going to go ahead and bet at the bank that they have the best hand to try and get those 2 law. The red player is going to bet at the saloon to try and get these 2 resources as well as just win the whole area. So remember, we have this 2 of hats here, which is really not good for most spots on the board. I think what is going to be good for us is we're going to want to place in the sheriff's office here, and we're going to go in the upper part, which is going to turn this 2 into a 3. That means we can actually do something with this town hall over here. We'll at least have a pair of 3s, whereas a 2 did us nothing with that 5 and a 3. Also, this is going to get us 1 good of our choice. So we're going to immediately take a coin, and the nice thing about that is we will have enough coins to buy this opera house. We really want to buy that second building because our ability is going to come into effect and start getting us resources at the end of our turn. So we'll go ahead and take that 1 gold. It's now the cowgirls' turn, and if you remember, they get +1 to their die roll for every 2 force they have, and they have 4 force, which gives them an automatic +2 to their die rolls. Also, that wanted poster gives them extra resources at the end of a turn. I think our cowgirl wants to make a bid to try and steal that away from the yellow player, which is us. So the green player comes in here and starts the duel. We're both going to roll our dice, and oh my goodness, well, the green player gets +2, so automatically we as the yellow player are currently winning because we win ties. It's 3-3. So the cowgirl player decides to reveal their card, and it is a 4, so 4 + 3 is 7. So now we have a couple options. We could reveal our card, which is technically a 3 because of that spot that we're on, but that would be 3 + 3 is 6, which is still not quite 7. Another thing we could do is spend force to try and re-roll this die to get a higher value. However, we've got 2 force already, and we want to build lots of buildings for our ability. We don't really want to spend that on hoping that we get a 4, 5, or 6. So I think we're just going to go ahead and pause, not use this, keep it hidden, and give the duel to the cowgirl. So the yellow posse lies down, green goes on top, and lastly, the cowgirl takes control of the wanted card. The red player is going to bet on the courthouse. And now for our final action, I think we're going to go ahead and go here and activate the jail. Now, if you ever activate a building that's been purchased by another player, they're going to get 1 gold into their coffers for using their building. However, we're using our own building, so we don't get that bonus, but we do get to spend as much law as we want to get that many force +2. We currently have 2 law, and we know we want 1 in order to buy this opera house, so we're only going to spend 1. So we spend that law, and that gets us 1, 2, 3 force. Alright, so now it's time for resolution. We see no one went in the hideout, so we don't do any poker hands there. In the saloon, the red player has a really nice straight, 3, 4, 5. They're going to go against the rival because there's no one else in here. The rival pulls a 1, which doesn't really do anything, so the red player wins. And that's going to give them 1, 2, 3, 4 influence of their choice. And the red player is going to take 3 gold and then 1 law. Down here, green and yellow are going to face off. Green has this 4, which is actually a 5 because of where they placed on here. And that means with us here with this 2, well, that still doesn't do anything. So the 5 high takes it. Now the green player gets to decide if they want a 3rd posse member for next turn or a force and a law. Now you always get your 3rd posse member if you don't build a building in a given round. And looking around, they can see they don't have the influence to purchase any of the buildings they qualify for, so they're automatically going to get this 3rd posse member, so they'll take the force and the law. So this puts them at 1 law and 5 force. Yellow and green are once again fighting here. Yellow has this 2, which is a 4 high, and green still has this 4, which is actually a 5, and that's a 5 high situation again, and the green player wins again. And that's going to put them at 2. And now at the courthouse, the red player fights the rival again. They once again have this 5, which is a great straight compared to this 1. They easily win it, and they get 2 more force. And that's going to even them up with 3 of all 3 influence types. Lastly, we go to the town hall to see who wins here. Now we know that this green player's 4 is actually a 5, but the 5 of hats is already out. And when there's a tie for that kind of situation, you actually default to the natural card. So this means red wins with a pair of 5s, and then green is going to go second with a subpar fake pair of 5s, and then yellow, we go last again with a 2, 3, 5, which is just a high 5. The red player can pick the central bank or the haberdashery. They're going to go ahead and buy the central bank. It's really expensive, but it is 4 victory points. So they're going to lose 3 law and 3 coins. However, this is going to go into their playing area. Now, you can only ever have 1 building face up at a time, which means this barbershop is now gone. We're going to go ahead and overlap this there. So now, whenever anybody goes here, they're actually going to be activating the central bank, which is a pretty cool card. It says you can pay 1 influence to immediately buy and pay for any available building, replace it with a new building. So this is one way to get more than 1 building in a turn. And now the green player has the option of building the auction house or the opera house. However, they don't have the correct influence for either of them. So instead, they're going to stand up their 3rd posse member. And this means next round, they're going to have 3 posse members to place instead of the normal 2. And now it's finally our turn to build. We could build this auction house or this opera house. We can only afford the opera house. Unfortunately, even though we lost this duel, we're still in the sheriff's office, so we have access to buy this. This is going to cost us our 1 law. It'll be 1 of our forces and then the rest of our coins. However, we now have this ability in play, which means if you have the highest single card, you get 3 influence of your choice during resolution. Now, anybody can pick this, but if they do, we get a coin from that. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in there. Plus, this also has a little mining ingot symbol, and we know that that was the one that was boosted in the first turn, so getting more of those is good. Lastly, our red player won the Town Hall poker hand, and that means they get to bump up 1 of the 3 symbols. They have 2 trains and 1 gold currently. Since they're the only one with train symbols at all, they're going to go ahead and use this opportunity to bump the train symbol up once on the track. Before we reset for the next round, our banker finally gets to use his ability. It says gain 1 influence for each 2 buildings that you have. We have 2 buildings. He's going to go ahead and get a coin. And likewise, the cowgirl with the wanted sign gets them 1 extra influence. They're going to go ahead and grab a law. Alright, the first player token goes over to the red player, and now we reset the board. It's the beginning of the 3rd round. Each player gets 2 cards, except the gambler, who once again gets a 3rd because they're still only using 2 of their posse members. We picked up a 3 and 5 of Longhorns, and there's a few different options here. If we had this 5, we'd have a pair of 5s down here, and if we had it over here, that would be a nice straight. However, a 3 would also allow us to have a straight over here, and we would also, well, I guess the 3 really is pretty poor. We're going to go ahead and stick with the 5. Red is the start player, and they're going to open up by betting on the bank. It's our turn, and we have this 5 of Longhorns, which gives us a really strong straight over here at the courthouse. So I think I'm going to go ahead and bet that we're going to win this spot here because, first of all, I'd really like to build this spot right here because it's nice victory points, and we can almost afford it. We just need 1 more force, and if we win it, we're going to get that force. So I think this is pretty safe. The green cowgirl player is going to actually activate the central bank. Now, the moment that happens, since they're activating another player's area, that player gets a gold. Now, it doesn't get taken from the coffers of the player who plays here. It's just a bonus for that player who got that building. So if you remember, when you activate the central bank, you pay 1 influence to immediately buy and pay for an available building and replace it again. Well, the cowgirl has a pretty good opportunity to do that, and if they buy now and not at the end of their turn, they can activate their 3rd posse member again. So that's a pretty good deal. The green player likes the look of this card, so they're going to go ahead and buy the mining company. They're going to spend 1 force to activate the central bank, and then this is going to cost 3 more force, bringing them down to 1, and then 1 law. They're going to go ahead and slide this on here, and that gives them extra strength in gold and railroads, both of which have been bumped already. And there's a new ability out. It says, for every mining icon in your area, gain 1 resource. The red player is going to place it into the sheriff's office, and they're going to bump up the suit value of the card that they have, but they also get 1 influence of their choice. They're going to go ahead and take a law. And now it's our turn, and we're pretty bummed that green did that because now we don't have access to buy that building in front of us. So I want to try and place this guy in a zone which will allow us to build a building. So I think it makes sense for us to activate this spot down here, which I haven't described yet. It says buy a leftover building at the end of the round. So this allows you to purchase a 2nd building in a given round from any particular spot. Also, this gives me access to buying this outhouse. Plus, we know we've got this 5 here, so we have a pretty good poker hand, and you can't make a straight from 2 to 5. So it's a pretty solid place to try to get a couple of different resources and probably buy 1 building, and who knows, maybe be able to buy 2. The green player is going to activate the law office, and they can spend any number of coins to get that much law plus 2. So they'll spend 1 coin to gain 3 law. At this point, both red and yellow are out of posse members, so it goes back to green, and they get to place their last member. And with this final posse member, they're going to go and activate the gunsmith, which is a lot like the law office. They're going to spend coins to turn it into force. So they'll spend their last coin to gain 1, 2, 3 force. It's now resolution time, and green is alone over here. They reveal that they have a 2, so they have a pair of 2s, and that's going to go against the rival, who has a 3. Oh no! That means the rival has a straight. That is going to beat a pair of 2s, so unfortunately, that means that the green player is not going to get these 2 force. And down in the saloon, once again, we have green unopposed. They've got a 2, which makes a 3 of a kind, and that definitely beats the 2 of a kind that the rival has, so the green player still gets these 2 influence of their choice. We've got a 3-way fight down here at the sheriff's office. The green player has a pair of 2s. The red player has, well, they upgraded the suit value on here, but it's still just a 4, so they're running with a 5 high, so they're not winning. And we know that we have this 5, and that is a pair of 5s, which beats a pair of 2s, so we win the sheriff's office. So we can either stand up a 3rd posse member or take a force and a law. Let's go ahead and take that 3rd posse member. That seemed to be a pretty good idea for green last turn. So we stand them up and we'll have 3 posse members for next turn. Red is unopposed at the bank. They've got a strong straight. The rival simply has a pair of 3s, so they're going to win it and get 2 law and 2 coins, which is going to put them at 4 for both of those. In the courthouse, we're unopposed. We've got this 5, which is a really strong straight. That totally beats the rival, so that means we get 2 force and 2 law. That maxes us out on force, and we get 2 law. And up here at the town hall, we see that red once again is going to win. They've got a pair of 4s, which is the strongest poker hand. Unfortunately, our 5 just gives us a 5 high, so the order is going to be red, yellow, green for purchasing buildings. The red player can afford both of these buildings. However, he knows that I'm going to try to build 2 buildings once at the end of the round. If he takes this, he denies that, and that's going to be the only building I even have a shot at this turn. So that costs him 1 influence of each type. And then that's going to go ahead and cover up the central bank and really heavily push him into trains. If you're curious what the ability is, it's an outhouse, and it says other players cannot duel any of your posse this round. So this is really unfortunate. The 2 locations that we can build buildings in have both been built already, so we don't get to build a building right now. Fortunately, we'll be able to do this at the end of the round once green has tried to build a building. With 3 posse members, the green player has presence in all 3 of these zones, so they could buy one of these 2, and I think the green player is going to go ahead and grab this haberdashery. This is going to cost them 1 law and 2 of their coins, and it's going to go ahead and replace that mining co. It's now the end of the round, so finally I can activate this guy down here, letting me purchase any building I want. Well, I can't even afford that one, so let's go ahead and buy this auction house. This is going to cost us all of our coins and our law and a single force, and it's going to replace the opera house in our little area. This also gives us 2 train icons, and we know that doing well in trains is good because red keeps bumping that in the majority tracks. Now that we've all had a chance to build, the red player gets to push up one of these 2 tracks because they won at the town hall. They're going to go ahead and bump the trains once again because they're so heavily invested in it. And for green, the wanted sign is going to go ahead and give them a coin. I think that's what they want. Alright, so let's reset for round 4. It's the beginning of the round, so everybody gets 2 cards except red player, who once again gets 3 because they're still running just 2 posse members. Alright, so in our hand we have a 4 and a 3. And normally you might be thinking, well, higher's better, but not right now. This 3 actually would give us a straight at the town hall. Plus, we would have a straight down here and a straight over here, so we're definitely going to go ahead and keep this 3 and discard the 4. One last thing for the beginning of the round is the star player token moves to us and we get to begin again. We've got 3 posse members this round. We are super low on law and coins, and we know we have a solid straight here, so let's go ahead and bet on getting the double law for the bank. The green player is going to play on the blacksmith, which will give them 1 resource for every horseshoe in play, and there's already 2 of them, so that's a pretty reasonable play. Of course, it's at the end of resolution. The red player is going to go to the saloon, but they're going to take the guaranteed resource instead of the bet. And they're just going to even things out by grabbing a force. We've got this 3, which isn't going to do much at the courthouse. I mean, it's really not much of a hand at all. This 3 is really strong over here. However, it's a bit weak on suit, so let's go ahead and place a guy down here, bumping up the suit of the card, also getting ourselves a resource and getting us in the running to probably win this straight over here. And I think we'll just grab a coin for that free influence from that spot. Green is going to place on their own haberdashery. It gives 1 influence for each hat card in play, and currently there are 2, so that's a pretty reasonable spot to go. But of course they don't get the bonus gold because they're going on their own spot. The red player decides to go here, which would let them purchase another building at the end of the round. And we are so low on law that let's go ahead and activate the law office to spend coins to get law. And we'll spend that 1 coin to get 3 law. So let's start with a hideout. We know we have this 3, which isn't really a good hand. That's just a 4 high. So we're going to go against the rival because we're all alone. The rival has a horseshoe. Okay, so this is interesting. We actually spent that action to upgrade these longhorns to horseshoes, which means we have the same poker hand, and it's actually a friendly tie in this case. Both players would get the benefit, so that's good for us. We get those 2 force. Unfortunately, we only get 1 of them because we are capped at a resource limit of 6. The red player has no competition here. They've got a 3, so they're just running with a pair of 1s. The rival also has a 3, but the 3 of teepees beats the 3 of horseshoes, so the red player wins this, and he's going to grab those 2 extra influence. And he's just going to take 2 force. We're all at the sheriff's office, and the red player has this straight as well. We had this one, we upgraded it to be a horseshoe, but the teepee still wins, so we're not going to get that bonus. It is worth noting that the green player has a 2, and a pair of 2s does not beat the straight that red has. And red is going to go ahead and take that force and 1 more law. And before we move on, the green player gets to activate the blacksmith at this point, which gives them 1 influence for each of the horseshoes that are showing. Currently, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, but this caps out at 3, so the green player gets 3 influence. And I think they're just going to go ahead and take 3 gold. It's time for us to fight the rival again because there's nobody else here. We've got this 3, which is actually a horseshoe, again because of this, and we know that the rival also has the 3 of horseshoes, so once again, we tie, everybody's happy, and we get a bunch of stuff, just barely. I'm really glad we put that spot there. So we get 2 gold and 2 law. So now the green player is going to go against the rival. They've got a pretty terrible hand of a 5 high. The rival wins that with this 3 here, so the green player is not going to get this bonus. However, we now get to activate the haberdashery. And this gives the green player 1 resource for each hat showing. That is 2 right now, so green gets 2 more resources. They're going to go ahead and grab a coin and then 1 more law. It's now time to evaluate the town hall again, and unfortunately, even though we had that straight going for us, the red player had the better straight. So red is going to win there. We come in second again, and green comes in third, so that is the order in which we're going to grab buildings. The red player is in these 2 locations here. They're going to go once again grab this card here because they want to deny it as an option to the rest of us. And since he has a red guy down here, he has the option of building this or anything else that's available at the end of this round. So this costs the red player 4 force, bringing them down to 2, and that's going to replace the outhouse and give them a couple of mining picks. Even though we have these 3 posse members, this one got purchased before us, so these are our 2 options, and we only have 2 gold, so we can't afford that over there. But we get a bonus when we get our 4th building for being the banker, so let's go ahead and build this guy. This is going to cost us 1 of our coins and then 2 of our force, and it says buildings you buy this turn cost 1 resource less for each wagon symbol on it. Okay, that's a pretty cool ability that's unlocked. A bunch of wagon symbols, and that one hasn't been bumped at all yet. That's pretty unfortunate, but this is good for us to grab another influence at the end of the turn. Green only has 2 options. Fortunately for green, they can afford this one, and it's worth a ton of points. So they're going to spend that 3 force, bringing them down to 1, and the 3 coins, bringing them down to 2. And it's a grand hotel. It says convert 2 resources of one type to 2 of the other 2 types. That's pretty powerful as an ability. That goes right there. Once again, red gets to bump up one of these tracks because they won this area. They're still solidly on trains, so they're going to go ahead and move the train up to the final position. And now this means that no other piece can get to this spot here. The second location is the highest that they can hope to get, and in fact at this point it looks pretty likely that it's going to be gold, but you never know how it's going to pan out. And now this red guy down here gets to activate and build any unbuilt building. The red player can afford both of these. He has to think about it pretty hard, but he's going to end up going with the cattle farm. This is going to cost 1 law and the rest of his coins. And it's going to replace that gunsmith that he just grabbed. It's the end of the round, so our banker ability activates. We have 4 buildings, which is going to give us 2 influence of our choice. Let's just go ahead and even things out by grabbing 2 coins. The one aside now activates for the cowgirl. She'll go ahead and grab a force. Alright, time to clean up and get ready for round 5. Let's pass the start player to the green player and then deal out everybody's hands. Alright, we got a 2 and a 4. There is some pretty good stuff for both of these. The 2 would make a straight down here and a straight down here. The 4 could make a straight up here and a straight for the town hall, which we have yet to win this game. I think that it really would be nice to win the town hall and build first. I think that the 4 is probably stronger, especially considering the 2 is the Longhorns, which is the weakest suit. The green player starts by betting on the bank. The red player is going to activate the Grand Hall, which first of all gives a coin to the green player for using an opponent's spot, and then it says you can convert 2 resources of one type to 2 of each of the other types. Red's in a good position for this. He'll spend 2 law to get 2 force and 2 coins. We've got this 4 here, which gives us a pair at the sheriff's office, and that's pretty much the best hand there is. The 4 of hats would beat what I have here, but that's it because you can't make a straight between 1 to 4. So let's go ahead and go here and hope to build 2 buildings this turn because we already have a sizable amount of resources. For the green player's second posse, they're going to activate the cattle farm. This is going to give the red player a gold, so they're kind of scratching each other's backs, unfortunately for us. And it's going to give the green player 1 influence for each of the Longhorn cards revealed. And right now there's 2, so that could get better for them. The red player is going to activate the local lodge, which will give them 1 influence for each of the TP cards in play. Currently there's 2, but that could obviously get better. We've got our last posse member, and let's go ahead and activate the wagon repair depot. That is going to give us a 1 discount for each wagon wheel on buildings we buy this turn. And several of the buildings out here have wagon wheels, have a couple wagon wheels. So effectively, this is 2 influence discount. It's really good considering I'm trying to build 2 buildings on this turn. All right, for resolution, the hideout is empty, so we don't do anything there. Green is alone in the saloon, and they reveal to have a 2, so that's a nice straight. But the rival has a 5. Well, that doesn't really do anything for the rival, so green goes ahead and wins this. And that's going to give them 2 influence of their choice. They're going to go ahead and grab 2 force. We're going to fight red down here. We've got 2 4s, and red reveals to have a 1, pair of 1s. The 4 is going to win it. This is either going to get us another posse member or a force and a law. Well, we're trying to build 2 buildings this turn, so let's go ahead and grab that force and law. That maxes out our law, and we've got lots of force as well. Now red activates this local lodge, which gives them influence for each of the TPs showing. There's still just 2 because I showed a horseshoe, so red gets 2 influence of their choice. And he's going to go ahead and bump up his law to 4. We're fighting green over here. We've got a pair of 4s, but unfortunately green has a straight, so green is going to win the bank and get those 2 coins. And that brings them up to 5 coins. And now red's going to fight the rival. He's got 5 high. The rival has a pair of 5, so red does not get this bonus, unfortunately for them. All right, at the town hall, looks like we finally get to win it. We've got a really high straight here, and nobody else really has anything. So I think the green goes second just for having a 2 high, and then red. So we get to build first. Yay! This guy right here gives us discounts if these buildings happen to have wagon wheels on them, but unfortunately they don't. So looking at these 2, I think we're going to go ahead and just grab this. It's got a railroad. Railroads are good. It's got 3 points, and we can afford it. So let's spend that 2 law and the 3 force, and that's going to go ahead and overwrite the wagon repair. But I'm pretty sure this guy's ability still comes into effect for this turn. Green now only has this 1 building as an option to buy, and they can afford it, so they're going to go ahead and grab it. It's going to cost them 2 force and 2 law, bringing both those down to 2. It's going to overwrite the Grand Hotel and give some more wheels. So they got a lot of wheels. Unfortunately, wheels aren't really worth anything right now. The red player can buy both of these, and they can afford them both. They're both worth 2 points. However, this has 2 gold icons, and this has 2 wheels. Gold is for sure going to get points, and right now red has 3, green has 3, and yellow has 3. So grabbing this is pretty good for winning that race for some more points. So that's going to cost him 1 gold and 3 force, and that blacksmith is going to overwrite the cattle farmer. Alright, so now we get to activate this guy and build another building, and we can actually afford both of these buildings here. Now, this one, we have discounts because we have this guy over here and it's got wagon wheels. However, this one has 2 train symbols on it. Right now, red has 5 train symbols, I have 4, and green only has 2. If I was to take this, it would put me at 6, and I'd be winning the train race, and that's worth 5 or 3 points. It's definitely a good thing to run for. I think let's go ahead and give that a shot. So we'll go ahead and spend all of our law to do that, and that's going to replace our fort. Now seems like a good time to activate the banker since it's the end of the round. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings. That means we get 3 resources. Let's go ahead and grab 3 more law just to even everything up. And the wanted sign over here for the cowgirl, let's go ahead and give them 1 more force. The last thing that needs to happen, and probably technically should have happened before I purchased that second building, but I don't think it's going to matter, is I need to push one of these 2 guys up. So right now I have 3 gold, green has 3 gold, and red has 5 gold. So I don't want gold to have more. I'm currently tied for the most blue, so let's go ahead and bump blue up. Alright, it's time to reset and set up for the 6th and final round of the game. So let's pass the start player over to the red player for the final round, and then deal out everybody's cards. We got a 2 and a 3, and the 2 is actually really good right now. We have a straight over here, and we got these 2 2s over here, which means we can have a 3 of a kind, and there's quite a bit of resources to be had over here. So let's go ahead, keep this 2, and discard the 3. For red's first action, they plop down and just buy another building. It's the final round of the game. They're going to try to build 2 buildings in this round, and that could win them the game. We'll see. We've got this 2. That makes a 3 of a kind. Let's go ahead and drop this guy down in the betting spot to try and get a bunch of resources. The green player is going to go ahead and activate their own lumber yard. They don't get the gold bonus, but as you can see, it says for every wheel you own, gain 1 influence to a maximum of 3. They've got more than 3 here, so looking over here, they'll go ahead and take 2 law and then 1 force. The red player decides to bet on the bank. We're in a bit of a bind. We really wanted a place there because we have the strong straight, and we can look out and see that the 2 of hats, which is the best, is in play already, and so is the 2 of longhorns, so only the 2 of teepees isn't showing. So does the red player have that? Another thing to keep in mind is that this wanted card is worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. So that gives me some incentive to maybe attack red, try to win the bonus in the area, and if I win, grab the wanted bonus for 2 extra points, but I would have to win the roll. Red has 4 law, so that's 4 different rerolls they could do, and I know that I only have a 2. It's not very strong, but if they have a 2, they would actually reveal what they had, but I wouldn't have any more decisions to make. This is a tough one. Ultimately, I don't think we can risk it. This 2 is just not powerful enough. I only have 2 force, so the red player could reroll many more times than me. I think I'm not gonna. The other thing to keep in mind is something might happen which would cause somebody to buy this building out from underneath me, and I'd love to buy that big building, but I think ultimately we should place in this zone here in order to give us another 3-point building that we could potentially buy. It's also got really good symbols on it. So let's go ahead and buff the suit of our card so it's no longer a horseshoe, it is now a teepee, and it's also going to get us 1 influence of our choice. Let's even things up and grab a force. The green player looks like they really wanted to fight me at the saloon, but at the last minute they decided to go over to the blacksmith. Maybe they were worried about losing the wanted card and those 2 points. But it's pretty obvious they want to do a poker fight with me over here, that's for sure. Alright, it's resolution time. Once again, nobody's in the hideout. We're competing with green over here. We reveal a 2, which is a strong 3 of a kind, and the green player reveals a 5. So that really didn't work out for the green player, but we're going to win 4 resources of our choice. Let's go ahead and get 1 of each, and then maybe 1 more force. The green player does get 1 influence for each of the horseshoes that are revealed. We do have this horseshoe, but remember, we turned it into a teepee, so the green player only gets 1 influence. And they're going to go ahead and take a force. It's now time for us to fight red. We show that we have a 2 of teepees because of our modifier, and red shows that they have a 2 of teepees, so we actually tie for essentially a pair of 2s, and we both get the benefit of that location. Since having posse members doesn't really matter at the end of the game, we're both going to take influence. So red gets 1 force and 1 law, and we get 1 force and 1 law. Red's all by himself at the bank. He shows that he has a straight, and the rival has not much. So red definitely wins this one, and he gets 2 more law and 2 coins. That maxes him out on law, and then he's got 4 coins. And then green shows this 5, showing a 5 high, but unfortunately the rival popped a 4, which is going to beat him, so man, green doesn't get those bonuses either. However, the town hall is not good for us. Everybody has a pair of 4s, and green wins with a 5 high, then red wins with a natural 2 of teepees, and then we go third with our kind of fake 2 of teepees. It's now obvious to us why green went in the spot. They didn't want to win it, they just knew they were going to win the town hall, and they could buy this out before we could. This cost them 3 law and 3 force. Replaces the lumberyard and gets them 4 points. Now red can buy one of these 2. They look over here and see this is the last thing that we can buy on this turn, so they of course buy it. They can afford it, and now we're not going to be able to build anything on this turn. The red player spends their 1 law, 2 force, and 2 coins. They replace their blacksmith with this long train of buildings that you can see here. Woo, goes all the way around. And as I mentioned before, that really turned around to bite us. Being last in the turn order in this last round means we buy no buildings. Ah, man, well. So finally the red player gets to activate this and build 1 more building if he can afford any of them. And he just barely can buy this relatively inexpensive one here, but it has a whole bunch of mining spots. He'll spend that coin and the 2 law, and that immediately replaces that local lodge. And the last thing to happen in the round is green gets to decide which of these 2 goes up. And funnily enough, both green and yellow are tied for both, so it doesn't really matter. They'll go ahead and bump the gold ingots up. At this point, the game is over. There's no reason to go through any excess influence grabbing because that's not worth any points, so let's tally them up. The first thing we should do is count up the majorities, and let's start with the railroads. Yellow has 6, green has 3, and red has 6. According to the rules, if 2 players are tied, they both get the highest points for what position they are tied for. So they both get 5 points, which we'll mark with these cards here, and I'll just put them on their stacks there. It doesn't say anything about the second place not counting, and the green player did have a couple railroads, so let's go ahead and give them 3 points. And now let's count up the mining symbols. Yellow has 3, green has 3, and red has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means red's going to get an extra 3 points, and both yellow and green are tied for second, so they'll both get 2 points. Lastly, we have the wagon wheels. Yellow has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Green has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And red has 1, 2. So once again, we have a tie, this time between yellow and green. So they'll both get 2 points. And our red player just gets 1 point for being second place. And now let's add up all the victory points. But don't forget that green was wanted at the end of the game, and that is an extra 2 points. So yellow has 21 points. Green has 26 points. And red also has 26. And when there's a tie for victory points, the player with the most buildings wins. Red has 8 buildings to green's 6. That means red is ultimately the winner, and us as yellow are ultimately the losers. And that was a complete 3-player game of Tiny Epic Western. I'd like to briefly mention 1 or 2 things about the game. The first one is that I played this game twice at Board Game Geek-Con last year, and between those 2 plays and this play that we did today, I've seen subtle changes through the rules and the general layout of the game, and each one of those changes has been for the better. It was kind of interesting at Board Game Geek-Con. I played it on the Tuesday, and then I played it on the Friday, and between that amount of time, they had subtly tweaked several things, and the game seemed better for it. And when I played it just this time here, I had to carefully read through the rules because several things had subtly tweaked, and I think I like pretty much all of the tweaks. One of them is you can do a lot more rerolls when you're in a duel, so there is some randomness with rolling those dice, but at least you can do several rerolls to try and catch up to that randomness if you are in a position where you have a lot of resources. Other things, they just tightened up the board. There's less places, so there's going to be a little more competition for the really good spots and maybe pushing people into dueling a little bit more. So in general, I'm impressed with the game. It seems like it's mechanically quite sound. I really enjoy the decisions between what cards do you choose and what location do you go at, because you might get an immediate benefit that you just need, or you do a long-term benefit thinking that you have the best poker hand. There's just a lot of really cool decisions in play, and I'm confident that through all the tweaking that they're doing, and I'm sure a little bit more as they do this full print and play trial thing, they're going to tweak it in ways that are really going to make it a very solid package. So in general, I've been quite impressed with it. If you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth reviews and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. You can also directly support the channel at patreon.com/JohnGetsGames. Thanks for watching.